Okay, so again, for the beginning, I'm doing a thing that I have not yet completely figured out, but it's going to be something like, for example, I'll just say like a pair of jeans. So, okay, how many people, or raise your hand if you are wearing a pair of jeans or you own a pair of jeans, and everyone will raise their hand. And then I'm going to show how jeans, even though they weren't, but this is just an example, started on a runway and then worked their way down to, you know, stores that normal people shop at. Okay, so, and then I might throw a quote in about New York Fashion Week, but I haven't found anything yet. So New York Fashion Week has roots in France, where Charles Worth was the first designer to show his designs on living models. And when he did this, it's, you know, a big deal because no one had ever done it before, and a lot of people came to see his designs, and his designs did really well, probably partly because they were good designs, but mainly because he did something different. And with that began fashion fêtes. So fêtes in French means party, so fashion parties, fashion fêtes. And a fashion fête was just like a fashion show. People would come and there would be food, and a designer would have models, you know, walking around in their clothing. And the designers who had really upscale fashion fêtes started a high fashion society almost called Chambre Syndicale. And it was a group of French designers, kind of the who's who of French design, and they started this group that, you know, if you were a part of it, you were seen as high fashion, but to be a part of it, you had to follow their guidelines. So you had to, you know, have a certain amount of designs each year, a certain amount of collections. You had to, you know, show at certain events. And then Chambre Syndicale became Paris Fashion Week, where these high society or high fashion designers would, you know, all have shows at the same time in the same place, and, you know, people would come from all over and press would come, and it was like the New Year's of fashion every time there was a Paris Fashion Week. But then, and it became a annual thing. But then during World War II, they couldn't do it in France because no one could get to France, or if they were in France, they couldn't leave France. So, you know, it was going to be impossible to have it. And that's when Eleanor Lambert, who was a American fashion journalist, sort of, had the idea to host Fashion Week in New York. And so she invited everyone that would normally go to France, the designers, the models, the press, the journalists, everyone. And everyone came to New York and had Fashion Week there. And it was a huge hit, and everyone loved it, and it became an annual thing in New York as well after World War II. So there was New York Fashion Week and Paris Fashion Week, and then, you know, now it's just built up where there's hundreds of fashion weeks, but the four main ones are Milan Fashion Week, London Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week, and New York Fashion Week. And, you know, through the century, Fashion Week has really evolved and changed. You know, they've added things, they've taken away things. It's, you know, and it's been hugely successful. Obviously, everyone has heard of New York Fashion Week, but it, you know, it affects the economy, it affects social things, and it affects a lot of controversial issues. So the economy. New York Fashion Week brings almost $800 million into the city every year. There's 2 shows a year, the winter and summer shows, and it's held in the Lincoln Center. It used to be held in Bryant Park, with the infamous white tents, but that was a little too casual and they had some security issues, so it's now held in the Lincoln Center. And with moving it to the Lincoln Center, a lot more expenses came up. There's always been expenses with New York Fashion Week. There are the taxes, income tax, tax in every sense, and that contributes a lot of money to New York directly. But just for designers individually, there's so many salaries they have to pay. There's the designers, the models, hairstylists, makeup artists, security, press, journalists, everyone. And so there's so many people who are involved in New York Fashion Week, and also the resources they have to pay, all the products, all the fabric, all, the lights and the music and everything. It's a lot of money to put on a fashion show. And since it's so expensive, when the economy is suffering, it reflects in Fashion Week. So during 2008, when the economy crashed, that year's Fashion Week was noticeably different. And the changes in it are that people are more impressed with how much someone what kind of a deal you could get on a piece of clothing. So it was more about how much you saved rather than how much you spent. And also the whole event is toned down. People don't spend thousands of dollars on lighting and music. The clothes are more they're not lesser quality, but they're more realistic. So someone could buy it and wear it on a consistent basis. The former mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg, is a big supporter of New York Fashion Week, and he believes that it contributes so much to the economy, and he is actually currently in the midst of building a new home for New York Fashion Week that should be done in 2018, I believe. Okay, so moving on to the social impact of New York Fashion Week. So socially, it brings a lot of tourism into New York, and this tourists, they don't only see New York Fashion Week, they see the surrounding areas like the Upper East Side, Chelsea Market, the Public Library. They have to stay in hotels, they have to eat at restaurants, and so they end up, contributing so much money to the economy that's not even counted in New York Fashion Week's contribution. And also New York Fashion Week attracts a lot of people to move to New York permanently, because New York Fashion Week has made New York the fashion capital of the world. And so people who are interested in fashion, while it may not be their career, but they love fashion, they want to live in New York to be close, to all the hustle and bustle of it, because they're not involved in it professionally. So, a lot of people who, are really talented doctors or scientists or, anyone, they come to New York for the fashion, and they bring with them their amazing skills and talents. So what you end up with is this, condensed area concentrated with a lot of talented people. And okay, so also after parties. After parties are just as important as the show, because they can, either make people talk about the line, or they're boring and, no one pays attention to them. For example, a few years ago, Alexander Wang had a normal fashion show at New York Fashion Week, and afterwards his after party was kind of hush-hush. It wasn't, a big deal. But Miley Cyrus came, and she wore this really scandalous outfit, and, everyone was talking about Miley Cyrus at Alexander Wang's after party. And so that led to more publicity for his line. Also, social media. Hashtags are a really big part of New York Fashion Week, and they create these little groups of people who, love a certain brand or just like New York Fashion Week in general. And also just in general, reaching people online. Social approval has become a really big part of New York Fashion Week and how successful designers are. And websites like Polyvore, which is a fashion blogging website, they allow people to see designs, like average people, to see designs that are on the runway at New York Fashion Week right away, and they can immediately comment their opinions on them, and say, I want that, I would wear that, or that's hideous. So making high fashion wearable has become a really big part of New York Fashion Week. Also, raising awareness at New York Fashion Week. So John Baptista, who is Michael Bloomberg's something or other, he talked about how since New York Fashion Week brings so much attention to famous people and fashion and all these different aspects, that it should also be put to good, the attention that comes from New York Fashion Week. So we should use it to spread awareness, and the Clintons took advantage of this. They bought this big inflatable pink elephant, like huge, and they put it in the entrance of the Lincoln Center one year, and people who were walking into New York Fashion Week were taking pictures of it and tweeting it and everything, and it was to raise awareness for the hunting and killing of elephants for their tusks. That's just an example of how that works. New York Fashion Week seems like a lot of, glitz and glamour and easy peasy, and it seems kind of magical, and, just these, like, beautiful skinny girls come out wearing all these beautiful expensive clothing, and, but behind all of that, it actually takes a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of money to make this happen. There's countless fittings for the models. They have to walk the runway and, rehearse, and they don't really get a lot of rest time because they can be up super late the night before with last minute fittings, and they don't have a lot of time in between shows. And also they're prodded and pulled and poked at all day. And this is for like an entire week. And also it's amazing that New York Fashion Week is, such a big, people put so much, they invest so much in it, so much time, so much money for, like a 5-minute show, and it's like it's over in 5 minutes, but there's 6 months of planning put into it, and it's also a lot of money for just 5 minutes. But for the future, there is a really, Fashion Week is surrounded by a lot of controversy, and mainly about models being too young and too skinny. So one designer, Hammer, has started using, instead of runway models, she started using role models for her clothing. So what she does is she has real women model her clothes at Fashion Week, and she says she hopes that other designers copy this trend and that it becomes the new norm. So for my senior research paper, or service learning project, I set up a prom dress drive with my fellow Flex senior Megan Jones, and we donated them to Hope's Closet, where girls who otherwise could not attend prom would attend prom. And I said this more gracefully in my previous videos, but I don't remember how I fit it in. And that's